Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today I will be painting over this sketch which I developed while I was taking my book cover illustration course on Domestika. I really loved that course, and even though I didn't really make a video out of it and neither did I really make my own book cover illustration, this was just one of the things that I played around with while taking that course. I did use a reference photo for the character and the bird, but the color scheme, the background, and sort of the lighting I just came up with by myself. And because of all that, I knew that this was going to be a challenge. The last time I did something like this was when I talked about how hard it was for me who's never been to art school and never really taken a lot of classes before. I think that I've grown since then, but I still knew even as I started this one that it was still going to be very hard for me. For one, because the image wasn't really super clear, and even the sketch that I had, I wasn't really too sure about yet. I think the only thing that was clear from the beginning was the values. I knew that I wanted her to be sort of in shadow while she's facing away from the sun, and also as the clouds are sort of forming this sort of halo around her. So I knew that, and I also knew that I wanted the colors of the clouds to be super pastel-y and to just play around with very bright and colorful clouds next to the very shadowed character. Most of the reasons why I was really in love with her just holding the bird this way is because I really love the silhouette that they both are making, especially with how it sort of has one wing down and it sort of just makes the silhouette more interesting. So yeah, that was the main thing that I knew from the beginning when I started this one, is that I really just wanted to see this very dark and interesting silhouette in front of the very bright and colorful clouds. But other than that main idea, I sort of wasn't really sure about anything else. Not even her face, which is something that I would normally fixate on before starting a painting this way. I wasn't really sure what I wanted it to look like. I knew that I didn't really want to draw that much attention to it because it would defeat the purpose of just having the cloud sort of envelope what the silhouette looks like. But because I think I wasn't so sure about what the face would look like, that was one of the main reasons why this whole painting was really hard for me. Also, other than that, it was a matter of execution. So even if I did know what I wanted it to look like, it would still be very hard because I've always had this problem with painting faces in shadow, and especially with gouache. I was sort of already anticipating this to be one of the hardest parts of the painting. And I was right. I sort of don't know how I edited this video into manageable length, because this whole thing took me about 3 or 4 days to finish, and I actually came up with 6 hours of footage, which is really crazy to me because usually I would have 3 hours of footage to cut down into ideally 16 minutes of video. For this one, I had to start with double that, so it was really hard because that is something that I would have to cut down without speeding up any of the footage. So yeah, half of the battle for this video was actually in editing. As hard as the process for actually painting this was, it was almost just as hard for me to edit this video. I think one of the few things that was to my advantage was working with art supplies that I love to work with. So my Holbein gouache, even though gouache in its nature is a very hard medium to work with, and a lot of the problems did come up from navigating the paints with how the values change when they're dry, but I just really love working with gouache, and I also just loved the look of gouache. I think that it worked really well with just the look that I wanted. The clouds, I can see myself using acrylics with them just because I really wanted it to be very punchy with a lot of different textures and very bold colors. So I can see myself using acrylics But the main character and everything else, I really can't see myself achieving the subtleties in her features that are in shadow. Really can't see myself using acrylics for that. I think that just works great with gouache. And another thing is the paper. This is one of my favorite papers to use with gouache. It's a Cotman watercolor paper, and I just really love the smoothness of it. The only thing I wish that I could change with it is how easily it warps. I do have the HOLBEIN sketchbook that just doesn't warp as much as this one, but it's just the right size for a sketchbook. I really wanted this painting to be a little bit larger than that because there are a lot of elements to it that I would have a hard time painting if it was any smaller. One thing that I really hope isn't frustrating for you guys to see is me painting over some parts where I've already worked so hard with. So like her face, most of my time before that was spent trying to get the face right, and so it's frustrating for me to watch myself sort of paint over it so I can start over. But at the time I just thought that it would be easier for me to just start over her face than for me to redo the whole painting from the start. Because with how frustrated I was at that time, I was tempted to just start over the whole thing and start again. So I just decided to paint over the face rather than just do that. It is sort of heartbreaking to see most of my work swept away like that, but it was sort of refreshing to finally see the proper proportions for the features without having the individual features just distracting me so much from trying to place them right. So I think it was good to just do that, but it is still sad to see me do that. And I actually do this for a couple more times for different parts of the painting. I think I was getting a little bit more brave after I did it the first time because I wasn't so much as seeing the work that went into parts of the painting that I didn't like. I was just seeing them for what they are, and that most of it is really just a distraction. So I did that a couple of more times. I did this with the eyes. And also there's just this big fabric that's hanging over one shoulder. I don't know what I thought about that before, but I think it was just because it's just so much dead space in that area, where on the right side so many things are happening with the silhouette. There's the bird, and then there are her arms that are positioned in a way that you will have light coming through them. So silhouette wise, that side is very interesting, where on the other side we could just kind of have her torso in a way. So I thought it would be a good idea to have this fabric hanging off of one shoulder thing. I didn't really like that. I just really didn't end up loving the look of it. So the paints and the paper I really just loved working with. But then towards the middle of the piece, mostly when I just started having a hard time with her face, I just thought it would be a good idea to just go over it with my Holbein colored pencils, just to make things easier for me. And surprisingly, it wasn't such a sacrifice for me to work with it. The last time I had to use colored pencils over my gouache paintings, it felt like a last resort because I was just having such a hard time with the colors that I wanted, and so it was just easier to work with colored pencils. For this one, because I knew it was going to be a hard piece and I've sort of had my work cut out for me, I really wasn't disappointed using my colored pencils. I really just loved them. I think it had to do with me not using them so much at all since I started painting, but I really missed using these colored pencils because they're just so smooth, but they're also extremely strong. It's sort of easy for me to forget how amazing these pencils are. This was one of the first sets that I had for coloring. So before I really even started painting, I started to work with colors using my colored pencils. I just really love these so much, and so it was a nice reminder of how much I enjoyed working with them. So yeah, one of the things that really made this process easier was because I was using art supplies that I loved working with, and so it didn't really feel like it was adding to the pressure that I already had on me trying to build a whole scene that is something that I'm just not really good at. So after I decided to finally take off that weird fabric thing off of one shoulder, what really bothered me about the painting now was how much dead space there was, not on the side where the fabric is now missing. It was more about how much dead space there was on her dress right under her arms. I didn't like how it was just this white dress, but also one other thing that bothered me was how she had her legs sort of up. In the sketch, I liked it that way because it sort of made her body look like it's twisted in a very interesting way. What I didn't like about that now, while I was painting it, was that it almost kind of looks provocative, which is not what I wanted. So I knew I had to figure out a way to fill up that dead space over there, but also sort of cover up her leg just a tiny bit more. So what I did do was take sort of the strings that she has on her arm. I took this from the reference photo of the girl holding the bird. So what I did was just bring the string over to her waist, and I also just love how it covers up a lot of the dead space on her dress that way. I just really like how the string is sort of leading the eyes to different parts of the painting, and not just to the clouds, which are almost overpowering the whole piece if it wasn't for the string, I think. But yeah, I really liked how that went on. It was unplanned, but became one of my favorite parts of the piece. What I did really enjoy was painting the mountains in the background, especially the ones on the right side. I just loved playing around with those. I was also at the time watching Sarah Burns' landscape videos, so I think it had to do with that. I sort of had to channel my inner Sarah Burns, but yeah, even though I knew that I had a lot of inexperience with landscapes, at least I sort of just enjoyed myself with painting those mountains, even though I didn't really know how accurate or even aesthetically pleasing they are. I just really had fun painting them. Even the problems I had with it, I was sort of just facing them in an objective way rather than being frustrated with them. My thoughts on painting the clouds were very similar to when I painted the mountains, in that I don't really know what I'm doing, but at least I'm having fun painting them. It's just really fun painting new things for this one. I really think it had to do with using art supplies that I loved, so I wasn't so much as focused on the difficulty with painting something I'm not used to. For me, it was more about enjoying the art supplies that I was working with. After I had painted the string and placed it there, I was already in the mindset of doing the finishing touches, even though it was still a while before I really finished the piece. When I think of putting in the finishing touches, it's almost like me just cementing the idea that I already had while I was in that stage of the painting. So even though it wasn't finished at the time, after I had painted that part, I knew where I wanted to go with the painting finally. It was almost instinctive how I went over it after that one. I was really just having fun with my art supplies, even especially with the clouds. I really love the different colors that they're making. I don't know that they look like they're great clouds. I don't even know the physics behind clouds, if they make sense in that way, but I just really had fun with those clouds. And also I think they're really pretty. I just love seeing the lavenders and the oranges together. Those are just colors that I don't really use that often together. And I even enjoyed painting the grass, which is something that I would normally have a hard time with. I was just not thinking that much about them at that time, because I just feel like I already have the most important parts of the piece in the piece. Hopefully I'm making sense, but it feels like the piece is already finished, so everything that I add on top of that now is just, it would just be that. I really love this painting, and I especially enjoyed the final parts of the piece where I used my neon purple colored pencil to finish in the clouds, and I also used that for some parts of the character to really tie everything together, and I ended up with a painting that I'm really proud of, and also something that I enjoyed painting. So yeah, that is it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed watching it as much as I enjoyed painting it. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you to my patrons for supporting me, and yeah, I will see you guys again soon.